They're like, purple people's out. Purple people's out. There's gunfire. There's smoke. Flashbang grenades. There's bodies. There's violence occurring. And I told them that's generally what happens in war, sadly enough. There's always tragedies and casualties in war. You know, it's been a long time since owls have, well, gone to war with other owls. It's generally not necessary. But in important matters, in big matters, in things that are crucial for the foundation of our existence, owls have gone to war before. And well, it looks like owls have gone to war again. We gotta stop with the ambiguity. The, well, not really wanting to point out the problem. Wanting to touch at it, poke at it, prod it, kick it and stir it up and shake it. But not wanting to, well, dismantle and abolish and obliterate the issue. You know, Hooters, the restaurant, is in the news. There's no way around this but to say we all knew this was going to come out about Hooters. You know, where should we begin? Or where should we start? Well, we got to start with the culprits. I'm a firm believer in that kind of strategy. Starting with the people who are responsible for the problem. You first have to analyze them. But while you're doing that, you've got to analyze what the real issue and problem is. And well, let's analyze that, and then we'll go to the people. Because I think the problem is larger than the individuals. Generally speaking, that's usually how it is. What is the problem, you say, Purple People's Out? The problem really has to do with, well, a struggle between body, pleasure, and passion. And well, ignorance. And well, lack of appreciation. This is an ancient struggle. And I do want to point out that we're in a new moon now. This is the Hunter's Moon, as they commonly refer to it. And today is October 20th, 2021. Now, it'll be a full moon. And the reason they call this a Hunter's Moon is because olden societies, ancient societies, used to use this moon to hunt different wildlife and species. I'm familiar with that. And I think that they still do that. I'm very much familiar with that too, as well. Anyway, the Hunter's Moon, or as I refer to it, the Huntress Moon, it gives, well, power to those who will seek it. And well, we definitely have an imbalance of power on this planet. It's been like this for a while. And well, there's a whole big struggle to try to balance out that imbalance. You see, we have a society held driven on toxic masculinity and patriarchy. And the imbalance, well, is that male-dominated governance, economic systems, philosophical systems, political systems, all of that has led us to the brink of, well, utter ruin in our society. We can all see it. People are arguing about statues of men who did evil and despicable and atrocious things to other human beings. Some people want to leave those statues up where they are in the public for us to honor them. Some people want to take them down and, well, have them as relics in museums for people to study and learn about. But the thing is, they're statues of men. We're not arguing about statues of women, or non-binary people, or transgender people. We're arguing still in the binary, whether there should be statues of men up, or whether they should be removed. We're not even saying that, well, why did we build these statues to begin with of men who were despicable and evil? Nobody's asking that question. Because if you ask that question, you have to get back to, well, the logical answer. Because we live in a toxic, masculine-driven society. And the society is wholly run by the patriarchy, which itself is very toxic. We don't want to get to that conclusion because we don't want to ask the questions. Now, a little bit of perspective here. Anyone who operates in a, well, imbalanced society is going to operate in an imbalanced way. So that's where the whole giving grace comes into, well, fruition, so to speak. But we shouldn't give grace to evil or despicable behavior. That's where we start to get into the individuals. We'll get there in a moment, because we still got to analyze the system. Because the system is the real problem here. And the system is what needs to, well, be destroyed. In the purple people's opinion. Now, we've got a tug of war going on. Now, I don't know if you've ever played tug of war. Basically, you have a rope. And, well, generally it's around a muddy area. And you have an equal number of people tugging on the rope on both sides. In this tug of war, well, one side ends up in the mud, and the other side ends up victorious. That's how tug of war usually goes. Right now we have a tug of war between, well, toxic masculine energy and the divine feminine energy on this planet. Divine feminine energy has had toxic masculinity's knee on his neck. And divine femininity has been saying that it cannot breathe. But toxic masculinity doesn't care. Because, well, it's toxic. And now that, well, people are starting to speak up, speak out, and fight back, you're seeing toxic patriarchy do a backlash. I mean, MGTOW. For those of you who don't know what MGTOW is, it's men going their own way. And basically, it was a philosophical outlook by a bunch of, well, fundamentalist men who hate women, but still want to profess that they like women. And basically, it states that, well, women just want to have everything. And, well, men, we have to do our own thing. Now, MGTOW is not a real thing. It's a philosophy, granted, but it's not a real thing. And let me explain why. Have you seen what happened in Texas with the governor who happens to identify as being male, Greg Abbott, a conservative, seeking re-election, trying to appeal to a zealot, evangelical, Christian fundamentalist wing of his party? He passed one of the most restrictive bodily autonomy bills in the nation's history. And, well, this bill, wouldn't you know, impacts individuals who identify as being women. And, well, you know, if you say you're going your own way, why are you still trying to legislate on the way out the door? Why are you still trying to, well, force your agenda on women when they clearly don't want your agenda. Period. I mean, Amy Berry Cooley and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Candace Owens, they're a tiny percentage of women. The vast majority of women, well, regardless of their political affiliation, don't want what's happening in Texas. You can see that, the polls bear it out. Texas is a conservative state, but the governor who's up for re-election, well, he's in serious trouble. He's deeply unpopular. And I can imagine the vast majority of women, when it's election day next year, will not be voting to re-elect Governor Greg Abbott in Texas. They'll definitely be voting for somebody else. Who that is still to be determined. Me, I've encouraged Matthew McConaughey, who I think is a very interesting and very thought-provoking individual to seek the governorship. He really wants to redefine politics and the way we do politics. And I think that's necessary at this point. You need visionaries in politics. Because now politicians, they're only hewed to extremes and fringe. And if you don't do what the fringe and extreme want, especially on the right, then, well, you don't even have a chance of having your job. And, well, if you're in fear of your job, you'll do whatever it takes to maintain and keep it. And that's what, well, conservative politicians are doing. Whatever it takes to appeal and appease a fringe group. A fringe misogynistic group of individuals who, well, swear up and down that their scripture and their religion teaches them that women are submissive to men. They're, well, to submit to men's will. And, well, that kind of ideology has seeped into, well, our very culture in this country. To the point where now you have private companies like Hooters. You know, the founder of Hooters, Edward C. Dorsey, he was on John Gruden's email list. John Gruden shared pictures of Washington cheerleaders in the nude to the co-founder of Hooters. And, well, Hooters has been in the news because, well, they wanted to do another mandate besides the vaccine. This time they wanted to mandate that, well, their servers wear something that they didn't want to wear. Something that was very revealing. Something that, well, they didn't ask the servers whether they wanted to wear this or not. They just wanted to mandate it. And if they didn't, well, wear it, the story went that they would have to resign or be terminated. And then came the backlash from the workers, from the servers. And they said, hell no, they're not going to do it. And I credit Gen Z, who went online and showed all of America what, well, old executive men wanted them to wear to serve food in this country and in restaurants all across America. Some people are describing them as panties. They might as well be described as beach thongs. There was nothing that would be left to the imagination. And for those of you who say, well, Hooters is already a revealing place, I get that, and I understand that argument. But go and take a look at the uniforms that they have now. And go and take a look at the uniforms, and specifically the shorts that they wanted, well, the new uniform that they wanted their servers to wear, without seeking, well, their advice or their approval or consent. You know, if Me Too taught us nothing else, the Me Too movement, it was about consent. And apparently it hasn't taught old white executive men who have a lot of money in this country consent. Because they still don't think they have to practice it. They still think they can force their, well, good old way, misogynistic ways on the society. And it's being shown time and time again that they can't anymore. The backlash was so severe that Hooters had to do, well, a complete 360. Now, the co-founder of Hooters we know received emails from John Gruden of nude Washington cheerleaders. The company and organization is rotten to the core because, well, the founder, one of the founders, is rotten to the core. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is you can't repair Hooters. Now, Hooters' mascot happens to be an owl. On behalf of the Purple People's Owl, we don't have anything to do with Hooters. Never have, never will. And well, we kind of think that Hooters needs to go away. It's time for a change. You know, I think what this is really about is, well, an old system, the sick, and on his deathbed, fighting with a ventilator for survival. First, a new, vibrant system that's, well, more inclusive, more equitable, more focused on consent, and, well, more focused on the well-being and mentality of actual people. You know, if they had asked any of the servers how those new shorts fit them, how, well, they might have felt wearing them, they probably would have never mandated that, well, they have to wear them or resign. But they didn't think enough to ask the women who wear the uniform what they would think about the new uniform. No, because, well, we still don't operate in a consensual society. We still operate in a toxic masculinity society. And, well, when you hear or read stories about toxic masculinity, like men raping women or doing things out in public that's despicable, know that that's a symptom, a sickness of our society that we live in, because we're imbalanced. And, well, the people at the very tippy top, the founders, the heads of major corporations, they give other people, well, these privileges to go and behave like this. You know, in 2011, it stated in the emails that the FedEx Field, Hooters, in D.C., Washington, D.C., would be used as the after party for the Super Bowl. Now, I can only imagine if the co-founder of the whole organization and restaurant is receiving nude pictures of Washington cheerleaders without consent of those Washington cheerleaders, that the servers, who are paid far less than cheerleaders for a national football team, that the servers were probably asked to do things that night that they wouldn't want to do or share. They might have signed NDAs, which stands for non-disclosure agreements. The email scandal should continue. The investigation should continue into the Washington national football team. They say the best disinfect for darkness is sunshine. I'm in agreement with that. We have a new moon now. It's time for new things, new ideas, new people. You know, once you get to a certain age, it's time to retire. Time to turn over things to, well, new visionaries. Come and pick up the mantle, the things that you, well, championed and navigated for. I think that's only preferable in this season. You know, we gotta have alternatives too. We gotta have things that rival what already exists. Especially if the things that exist just don't work for the vast majority of people anymore. There should be an alternative to Hooters, run and operated and founded by women and non-binary individuals. And this organization should seek the approval and really the advice of the servers that they hire, regardless of, well, what their identity might be. And it should definitely be an inclusive and equitable place to work in. I will never be in Hooters because I will never support the organization and what the founder did. And well, I think you should think long and hard as to whether you want to go back to Hooters too. You know, recently a waitress shared her story. She worked at Hooters. A family came in, and apparently they raked in $624 of like expenses at the Hooters restaurant. And well, they got mad at the waitress for not telling them how much they were spending at Hooters. Now here's the problem with this. You are the one purchasing the thing. The waitress is only taking down your order. You have the menu with the prices listed adjacent to it. See, it's a lack of accountability nowadays that's really, well, driving the insanity. Nobody wants to take accountability. Everybody wants a scapegoat to point the finger at somebody. It's social media and Facebook that's driving the division. It can't be that Rush Limbaugh was on the air for 30 years in America across the airwaves and drove so much division and toxicity. No, it's Facebook. It can't be that, well, Facebook wasn't around during the civil rights era, and neither was Rush Limbaugh. But still, John Lewis had his head beat in by sheriffs on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. We gotta stop looking for scapegoats and excuses and take some accountability for actions and behaviors of the individuals and hold people accountable that, well, don't do the right thing. Don't do the thing that the vast majority of us in society has agreed and come to a consensus that should be the thing that we do. We've come to a consensus that you shouldn't share emails of people in the nude who haven't consented to have their photos shared. That's a consensus. The co-founder of Hooters should have never accepted that email from John Gruden. And when he did receive it, he should have reported it because he's liable and he's a mandated reporter. He was in a position of authority to do so. Instead, he gave a VIP Hooters card to another individual. And who knows what that entails. So much secrecy from the good old boys club. You know, if everything's okay up there, why can't any of us down here ever know about it? Strikes me as odd. Maybe that's the real conspiracy theory. Secrecy itself. The fact that, well, a group of men who we never see, who have money in this country, do things to objectify and sexualize women and girls. And then we complain, well, when somebody abuses women and girls in the society. But, well, that's being spoon-fed to us by people that have lots more money than we do in the society. We should all boycott Hooters. And we should find a fucking alternative to Hooters. Run by women. Run by individuals who are non-binary. You know, equity is important. Representation matters. Consent matters. We've come to a consensus as a society on those things. And just because a Neanderthal group of tribalistic individuals who still think that they have privileges over all the rest of us haven't made that determination to come to that consensus, doesn't mean that the rest of us are going to wait on them to make that determination. Like I said in the beginning, it's been a long time since owls have gone to war with other owls. We generally don't go to war with anybody, unless our own. But on big things, big matters, the importance of our civilization and our society, we have to take a stand for what we think is, well, beneficial and just. No waitress should have ever been asked to wear those shorts without, well, first seeking their approval to wear them. That's consent 101. Don't make a demand that women wear something without gaining their consent. Do we need to go back to first grade and do the ABCs again for some of these old dinosaur men of the past? You have to get a yes before you do anything. If you get a no, no still means no. If I was petty, I would do something to Hooters. If I was petty. But I'm not petty. No. And doing something to one Hooters or two Hooters or three Hooters will only impact, well, the lowest wage workers amongst us. It will impact the women who are doing this just to put food on the table for themselves or their family. So that's not beneficial. This has to hit at the crux of the matter. The individuals responsible. I would call on women of financial means in our society to start a chain similar to Hooters, an alternative. I would call on non-binary individuals of financial good means in our country to start an individual organization or chains of organizations that really benefit women and use the owl mascot appropriately. You know, don't use the likeness of a wise and very sophisticated creature and species for low-level vibrational bullshit. That's not a smart thing to do. It's very disappointing to see the likeness and representation being, well, misappropriated by, well, despicable individuals. And that's what Hooters, not the people that work at Hooters, but the people who founded Hooters, that's what they're doing. All of us are really upset about this. We're deeply troubled about this. And it continues. And we're deeply troubled that it continues. But what I do know is this. Awareness is being gained throughout, well, everywhere. And people are growing frustrated in mass. And well, if the people turn on you from the inside out, you're done. And I think that's what's happening. People are turning on toxic patriarchy, toxic masculinity. They're over it. And well, there's going to be ramifications to that. That might not be pretty at all times. But well, wars are not pretty. Wars are, well, tragedy in essence. Because they should never have to happen. People should really, well, consult people before they do things. And because those things are not done, people make critical mistakes. Mistakes that could have been avoided had there been consultation. Mistakes that are unforgivable. To the victims of violence by toxic masculinity and toxic patriarchy, the Purple People's Owl humbly apologizes. Even though we're not the perpetrators, in a society governed and operated in toxicity, everyone has some culpability. We have to redouble our efforts to destroy the patriarchy. We have to redouble our efforts to, well, bring balance, a divine femininity. And this is a new moon, a full moon, one that I hope does all of those things and more. The time for ignorance and toxic masculinity and subversive patriarchy and, well, violence against women just because they're women based off of, well, toxic driven scripture written by patriarchal men who hated their own mothers and women in that century and time period. Those days and that time, well, hopefully, with all good guidance, hopefully that time has come to an end.